Welcome, everyone. Yet another episode of Drink While You Think. I'm Kenji.
I'm Matthew.
We got Brian with us, our buddy Brian from Texas. Brian, give us the quick rundown. Who's Brian? What's happening?
Austin, Texas. Bookkeeper, focused on the restaurant and bar scene here. Worked for about 50 different clients. Been doing it for about 8 years. Before that was front of house operations, but always had the accounting degree burning a hole in my pocket. So dove in, trying to support independent restaurants, make it through. Nobody opens a restaurant to do bookkeeping, but I love it. So started doing that, layer on some strategic consulting on top of it. And then, about 4 weeks ago, got into the unemployment, got into the unemployment game, and now I'm in the PPP game.
Woo! There we go.
What a deal.
Well, I mean, so I feel like with your background, there's going to be something good you're drinking. What do you got there? What are you sipping on, Brian? What's your drink?
Well, Texas, I've evolved, and basically everything starts with tequila. There's basically ranch water, just tequila, Topo Chico, a little bit of lime, a little bit of salt, and that kind of gets us going.
Nice,
and,
nice.
That's the evolution. It's so hot down here. I mean, it was 90 degrees today.
Jeez. Man, that's solid. The ranch water.
Sorry, I've got clients that are going to keep calling me through this thing, so you may see my LinkedIn profile pic pop up. I apologize.
The pre-COVID beard.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I'm now full Will Forte, last man unearthing it. I'm going. I'm a goner.
And we pick our guests on who could make us look bad in the beard game.
Yeah,
so
killing us.
You could
us.
make
make
us look the worst. This is 7 weeks of growth for me, and it's 9 weeks of growth for Kenji over there.
We're like 9 years. Like 9 years for me. It's
I'm afraid we've got more time in quarantine, so you'll get there. Just stay committed to the cause.
Stay committed.
What
Matthew, are you drinking anything? Anything as exciting as good tequila, ranch water?
No, I'm looking for, but I'm on a quest to find like a good like stout, like average like porter that I can go to, or stout. So I found this in the store. I found the Yuengling Black and Tan, which I've never tried.
Okay, good.
It could be like an everyday porter, because like most porters are pretty pricey, and stouts, they like just more than your average beer. So I'm looking for like that everyday beer, because I don't like Guinness. I like stouts, but I don't like Guinness. So that's my goal.
Okay. Give us a little sip. How's it tasting so far? Your first reaction.
Interesting.
Okay.
I'm gonna have
usually when Matthew says interesting, usually that doesn't always end up being a high rating, but we'll see at the end.
Oh, we'll see. So what are you drinking today?
I'm going pretty basic, but I'm going with the Lagunitas IPA. Pretty good IPA. I think that's San Diego area. It says Petaluma, California, but I think that's near San Diego. I think it's Southern California.
Yep. I think you're right.
Nice. And what's good about this too is this is sold at Costco. So last week on my Costco run, picked up some of these. So this is, for me, I'm like, okay, this is about, otherwise you're drinking pretty much just domestic light beer from our Costco. So yeah, always a solid one. Cheers, everyone.
Yeah. Cheers.
Thanks for coming on, Brian.
Here's to another week without SBA guidance.
Yeah, there we go.
That's true.
One more week without it. So.
One more week.
Well, normally Kenji has
the. Go for it. Yeah, you lead the way.
Yeah, normally Kenji has show and tell. Since I kind of am the one, because Kenji knows most of the folks out there. I was going to share how I know you.
Oh wow! Look at that.
You married one of my lifelong friends. Over here, this lovely lady on the left.
That's her.
Who's now Annie Stubbs. So, but her brother over here on the right was my best friend in the second grade. So I've known your wife for a very long time, and her mother is one of my mom's best friends to this day. So, but they also have a restaurant called The Rear of the Steer, which I thought was appropriate in Texas. So I say that to have a little homage to some of my lifelong friends, who you know very well. but also to ask you, you're kind of the expert. It just seems like this has hit the restaurants the hardest, COVID.
No doubt. No doubt. And I love the fact that you've shown my brother-in-law in that picture. He's going to love this.
Oh, yeah.
He's rocking that summer look, that El Paso summer look.
Yeah.
No shirt and jean shorts, but
jean shorts.
But yeah, no. I think that's kind of, you hear it from the Independent Restaurant Coalition, you hear it from the National Restaurant Association, you're hearing it from everybody, right? Not only is the PPP hard to administer, it also doesn't work for restaurants because many of the restaurants right now don't have payrolls to protect. Here in Austin, obviously, we kind of hit the early COVID news with canceling South by, which represents a huge influx of dining and entertainment dollars to our economy. And so even that week, my team and I started tracking year over year drop and what it was going to mean to the top line revenue by canceling South by. And really was thinking that that's what we were going to be dealing with, right? Okay, we lost South by, that's a bummer. But, the fact of the matter is that half of South by Southwest is a music festival. That week is particularly slow in restaurants as well. It's kind of counterintuitive. A lot of the restaurants around here really promote that, like, hey, we're not busy. People are at shows, they're eating, truck food and drinking beer. They're not sitting in a nice restaurant during South by, at least the interactive portion, when all the tech bros are here, they're showing off and spending money in expense account, or at least they were. And then, but then come music, everybody's at the shows, and so the restaurants usually. So we were expecting to see, of course, a drop off during interactive, and then, but we were actually honestly thinking, it's like, well, nobody's traveling for spring break because they're going to be safe and not, avoid COVID. So maybe we can, we may be okay this second week of March. Well, it was that weekend that, I don't know, the writing was kind of on the wall. And that weekend, I have a good friend from high school who sublets a smaller office from me, and he works in kind of global risk management. And I told him, I think headed into that weekend, I asked him, I was like, what are you hearing? Like, what's going on? And he was like, Brian, my kids haven't been in school for a week. He was like, this is super serious. And he was like, I think you should start preparing for a shutdown. And thankfully he told me that, because that Saturday, I kind of, through some mutual acquaintances, got in touch with the mayor's office here in Austin and said, what's the plan? What's going to happen? What do we do? How do we take care of our employees? And so that weekend, I really started connecting with everybody at the Texas Workforce Commission. And then that Monday, we started laying off people. And so we processed, I think, 850 layoffs that first week.
And when I had just this question, people I don't think an average person has a sense for this, and I don't have a sense for this. Like, when you say, oh, you can still do takeout, what kind of dip are the restaurants that, even the ones that decide to do takeout, revenue wise, what kind of order of magnitude percentage are they able to maintain?
Yeah, so I have this my 2020 South by COVID sales impact Google Doc. Let me pull it up. And,
oh my gosh. Oh man.
I'll tell you. So like I was saying, that first week across the sector, we were experiencing anywhere, just by South by being canceled, we were off anywhere from neighborhood restaurants were off 17%, fine dining was off 40%, pizza was only off 5% because pizza is, you can't stop pizza even in a pandemic. You can't stop it. Any aspiring restaurateur, scrap your business plan and turn it into a pizza plan. Otherwise, pizza. And in Texas, you can maybe get away with barbecue and Tex-Mex, but it'd be better on a pizza. And then, so that was that first week. That second week of COVID, our bars were obviously off 91% because they were closed. Fine dining was off 85%. Neighborhood restaurants off 67%. pizza was off 54. And then my food trucks were off 73. Now, subsequently, pizza has stayed at around let's see here. Yeah, so pizza has stayed at around a 50% drop since COVID on top line. Now, I mean, what does that mean for my book of business? It means that we went from 250K a week down to 150. I guess that's a little off, but yeah. So again, point being is, I mean, they're still making it, but very few and far between are. Very, very few and far between. What you're seeing in the fine dining and the neighborhood restaurants are probably total layoffs, with owners and chef owners getting back into the kitchen and basically doing it themselves with maybe one or two other sets of hands. And they're simply doing that partially to provide, something to the neighborhood or something to the community. Now, I will say, surprisingly, and well, not surprisingly, but it sure is interesting. Some of my clients, I've got a few that are butcher shops and restaurants, right? The old combo, or bakeries and restaurants, right? Another combo. And those have always been tough, right? Because they compete against the grocery stores every day. And pre-COVID, if you're buying all your other groceries, you're just going to most often you're going to buy the steak or the fish or whatever, because you're there out of convenience. To drive across town in traffic to go to the boutique butcher shop, that's a luxury, and most people don't have it.
Mm-hmm.
But with COVID, it's interesting because those places have been able to pivot and become grocery stores. And it has been, they've really been able to manage this change pretty well, because now all of a sudden it's nice to have a butcher shop in your neighborhood that you can walk to.
Yeah.
And they can do produce bundles and do breads and meat and eggs and cheese and butter and all those things. And it's become, it really has been helpful, because it releases the pressure off of those grocery stores, which are already, I don't know how you guys are doing curbside with your grocers, but, I mean, we hop on to put in our order, and, you're 14 days out before you're picking up groceries again. Wow. And so the restaurants that have been able to pivot to offer the staples are doing are hanging in there. But that's the bulk of their business. It's not the to-go food. So to go and contactless stuff, I mean, it has been hard. And of course, I mean, look, restaurateurs are nimble, right? I mean, the good ones can pivot within service to meet a need. And so a lot of them have, and they're doing stuff like, tonight we're going to have a pre-made lasagna tiramisu combo from one of our Italian places. It'll be great. It's wonderful. We did it to support them, and picked up an extra one and drove it out to some friends that just had a baby. So that's there, but that's not sustainable. It's not going to be without significant rent relief, without significant access to some capital. And in Texas, the alcohol laws are pretty, the TABC and the old laws in Texas are pretty stringent. And so, it'll be interesting to see how we fight back on how do these businesses survive over the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah. Is it even, I was just curious, can you even set up a restaurant to make it financially viable at 6 feet distances, social distance? Can you? I
mean, I think
do it.
I think you're going to be able to, but I think what you're going to have to do is, so the capacity in the dining room obviously will be lessened, right? You're down. Let's say you, depending on how big you're,
right?
Yeah, let's say 50%. Assume that center to center between the two tops has always been 3 feet. Now it's 6, right? Let's just say it's 50%. I honestly think, and what I'm suggesting to a lot of my clients, definitely the fine dinings that already did it, but even the neighborhoods places, I think the dining in will need to become a reservation only endeavor. I think that you'll need to pre-order or have the order set. I think you'll need to, if you are going to order at the table, I think you should use your phone or, do some sort of online ordering, even at the table. And I think that, I honestly, a lot of my clients, and I think it's a good idea too, I think you may be looking at more service fees being added instead of gratuities, right? So it's like, hey, this is the price of the experience. You've already prepaid it. There's no signing off on the thing. There's no contact. There's no touching. We know when you're coming. We know how much food we need to make for you. That's what we're going to do, because that level of organization will then allow these restaurants to continue to offer the to-go while simultaneously servicing a 50% occupancy inside.
Yep.
And stay safe, right? I mean, that's the other thing. We're looking at the National Restaurant Association came out with their guidelines for safety. Texas Restaurant Association's got theirs. We're working to organize independent restaurants here in Austin at goodworkaustin.org. And we're going to try to come up with our own set of independent restaurant and bar standards that we can sign off on too. Because I think that, well, obviously you guys are in Georgia, so you know what it's like. Texas is going to be the same way, right? It's like the state and the city are going to put a very light touch on guidelines. And so I feel like independent restaurants and bars need to make a commitment to a stauncher safety measures, sign off on it, because look, if a restaurant doesn't take it seriously and it's an epicenter or a part of a spread, that hurts us all. That hurts every restaurant that's trying to make a go of it. If you walk into a restaurant and you don't feel like they're adhering to the safety standards that need to be adhered to, now all of a sudden you may question going back out that next week. And so part of this reopening really has to be a shared commitment. Hey, we as a guest are gonna, if we are not, if we're going to take our own temperatures before we leave to go into a restaurant. And if we're above the recommended CDC guidelines, we're going to stay home, and vice versa. I mean, same thing. It's like, and then these restaurants are going to have to work with staff members to make sure that they're taking care of themselves outside of the restaurant.
Yeah.
So are bars in worse shape than restaurants are? I mean, are they just getting crushed?
Bars, there's a few bars that have some, healthy merchandising, and they're doing, like, in Texas, you can do little 375 airline bottles in these kits with food, because God forbid somebody gets more than 375 milliliters of tequila. But that's another argument for another day. But yeah, I mean, so they're hanging in there. But yeah, I mean, I'm a co-owner in a craft cocktail bar that seats 35 people on a good day, when it's packed. Yeah. It's inside only. There's no to-go offering. There's no merchandise offering.
Yeah. What do you do?
We're talking about remodeling the space to somehow make it some sort of reservation only private experience where we can somehow give people the experience. But even that is still very risky for our staff. How do we ask a staff to come back and work in an environment if we can't, it's going to be, those are things that may not come back. And that's what I mean is like, early on in this, when my Twitter rants were basically, calling for vaccine loans. I personally think that there should be loans available to occupancy-based businesses whose first payments are not due until there's a vaccine. Now, granted, that's a hard thing to enforce because there may never be a vaccine, right? But at least a runway to give people the time to pivot to what the new model is going to be like. And the problem here is that we need time to know what's going to work. And these businesses, like I said, they're nimble, but you can't be nimble without information.
Yeah. There's no timeline. I mean, how do you work against that, right? I mean, it's just, it's incredibly challenging. And do you think that, so it sounds like under we think could happen, or as things get better, I could see back of house, right? Still need to be back there and obviously get the food, ready, but like, it's trying to think of what's going to happen kind of in a front of house experience, right? And trying to protect team members who are interacting with guests and how to do that. Just seems like that's going to be a really interesting, I don't know.
Well, again, I think the table side experience is not happening for the foreseeable future. And I think that this is where I was going back to I think I mentioned service fees. I think that this is a great opportunity for the restaurant industry to strongly consider going away from the tipping model. And, you know, you guys know this, one of the big reasons why people don't go away from the tipping model as an employer is because of that tip credit.
Yeah.
And I think that we should really talk about it. I think we should incentivize people to pay a living wage or a minimum wage. And you should get the credit if you're doing that, not if you're doing the old model, not if you're tip. I mean, that tip credit, that dollar for dollar credit, I mean, it's this little side. It's great for businesses. Trust me, I get why it was there, right? But let's be honest, like that is incentivizing an old model, and that model allows disproportionate compensation. Your back of house doesn't get to participate.
Yeah,
right.
I've seen it, and I think there've been a few people. No worries. There've been a few people who.
It's a nice little interlude.
Yeah, the interlude.
Sunglasses.
Seeing Brian. Yeah. I've seen a few people kind of moving to that model already. There've been some who, I'm trying to think out of New York. Was it Danny Meyer or was it someone else who's been kind of an advocate?
And he was an advocate before, and for good reason. And when I looked at it as an analysis for my clients, it always came back to that. Well, you're giving up the tip credit, and yes, it gives you flexibility and compensation, but you know, it's a hard sell in Texas, right? I mean, libertarian, you know, whatever side of the aisle you're on, it's like, you know, don't tell me I have to give you 20%. You didn't give me 20% worth of service. I need that. I get it. But I honestly think in this environment, right, where the front of house's storytelling role and guiding is going to be even lessened, I think that, especially, and I'm telling everybody this, during PPP in the 8 weeks, like do a service fee, because you're interacting, you know, the whole get rid of the tip pool situation at all. You want to maximize your revenue, because this is the 8 weeks that you're going to have, you know, theoretically 0% labor costs. So those service fees can stay in the bank, and you need them in the bank, because that's what's going to give you some runway when these 8 weeks are over. But I just think that should stay. And I think that the communication to the guests should be by giving you an 18% service fee, it allows us as a business to compensate the people inside this business the way that we know they need to be compensated. And it's going to give us more flexibility to offer health insurance or offer sick leave or do the things that we need to do to take care of back of house and front of house in the way that we know that they need to be compensated. Right. I was just talking to a client today, because we're talking about bringing people back on the payrolls and figuring out what their average hourly was with tips, right? Because the PPP includes tip compensation. We had a back of house employee so far this year, their average hourly rate was $17.50. A server, PM server in the same restaurants, average hourly was $40. Yeah. And I'm sorry, but that employee is not twice the employee that the other one is. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I do know that, yes, if we compensated everybody at $7.25 an hour, right? If everybody was at minimum wage, then we can administer a tip pool however we want. But I just think, you know, just not even bringing up the tips into it, because, you know, you're always going to have employees that are going to say, that's my money, and you're taking it and giving it to somebody else. And there's always going to be a lawyer that's going to take that class action lawsuit and try to get you. But a service fee is right above board. In the state of Texas, up to 20%, no sales tax on top of it. Yes, it shows up on your P&L. Yes, it's profit, but you pay it out. So be it. The biggest hit there under that whole scenario is the tip credit loss on the back end. Mm-hmm. And that's why I just think if we could talk, you know, if we could argue at the federal level that tip credit needs to be adjusted somehow, I think you could start to see some other people opt into this, which would mean higher wages for the industry, and therefore a better safety net for these people when they do go on unemployment.
Yeah.
Crazy. I just think it's crazy the decision people are having to make between trying to bring people back or let them take the unemployment where they make money. You know, I think, again, the really underwaged people, it just seems like a terrible situation for everybody, and it's kind of maybe a discussion that we need to have on this is my life.
well we you and I talked about it earlier in the week, Matthew. I mean, The fact is that if you offer somebody a job and they deny work, that denial needs to be in writing, and that is supposed to be reported to the Workforce Commission or the unemployment agency in your state. And they could potentially lose those benefits. So the terrible thing about the PPP in the restaurant industry is that the interests are misaligned, right? You have the employer that is desperate to hire people back in order to, they basically made us unemployment agencies ourselves, right? So now we are acting as the unemployment agency because there's no work for them to do. And we have to convince them to come back to work. And we pretty much have to tell the employees, like, look, if you say no, you could possibly lose your benefits altogether. And, that's where we talked a little bit. I mean, some states do have shared work programs, which allow you to bring them back in a reduced hours format. And that will allow them to maintain some state benefit. And then also the FPUC, the $600 a week. But yeah, it ultimately, ideally, the PPP and the SBA would come out and say, hey, based off of any NAICS code that is occupancy based, these codes have a carve out and your clock doesn't start until your particular state and or city lifts the stay at home order.
Right.
So then your 8 weeks starts then. So we gave you the money, you've got it, don't spend it yet, start the clock later. Or
that makes the most sense. That makes the most sense, right? I mean, what are you going to, because otherwise, what are you going to have people do? I mean, you're going to come in and just have people,
It not only does it make the most sense from just a human and public health standpoint, but it honestly makes the most sense from a stimulus standpoint. Why would you force an industry that cannot generate revenue to spend dollars on work that isn't there? If you just waited, if you just pressed pause on restaurants and bars and retail and hotels until July 1, let's just assume July 1, these phase 1 reopenings are going well. We're not seeing spikes in the curve. The hospital infrastructure is not being overwhelmed. So come July 1, everybody's got some confidence to come back into all these restaurants at a limited capacity, but they actually want to, right? Because they feel safe. They know more. We've got some treatments. We've got some antibody testing. We have whatever. Imagine what it would do for that industry to have 8 weeks worth of real revenue offset by 0% labor. That's what these law firms are getting. That's what that's what the services firms are getting. That's what the construction companies are getting. Their revenue's staying static and they're getting no labor costs. And it's just totally misaligned. If they had started PPP, the PPP is an interesting program, but in a rush to calm the markets, they threw it at everybody. And the reality is that they should have started with occupancy-based businesses when the shelter-at-home orders lifted, and then the accounting and the construction and the healthcare and all those others. When they're going to need PPP? 6 months down the road. Q4 is when we're going to need PPP because all of our clients now, our entire client base just changed and they're not renewing contracts or they're not paying services anymore because they're shutting it. That's when we're going to need the payroll relief. Now, granted, they're giving it to us now and it'll go to the bottom line and it'll sit there and hopefully smart businesses will save it. But the point is that if what you're trying to do is stimulate the economy, you're missing out on, yes, you're giving it to those employees, but those employees aren't going to go spend those dollars. They're scared and their entire industry just went up in smoke and they don't know when it's coming back.
Right.
They're going to park that in savings. They're not going to go spend those dollars. They would have been better off backstopping the unemployment funds across the country and saying, there will be money in unemployment. We know that this is hard. Here's the little bump. Your employers are going to have access to money when they need it. And that's going to happen when we know that they can reopen safely.
If we ran,
if you ran the world,
it'd be awesome.
Well, I guess I'd ask this, Brian. So there's a lot of, we've seen this in other industries too, right? All kinds of challenges here with the PPP and how it's been administered, and politics and all the other nonsense. I guess what's when you're talking to your clients who are these independent restaurants and bars, is there one key thing that you keep, kind of advising them to do? One, I guess our hope, right, would be that we come on here and we drink with our friends and we talk about things we're interested in, but maybe some other restaurant who doesn't have access, who's not in Austin, Texas, or doesn't have access
Yeah.
to someone like you. Should they be going for loans, or what's the most common piece of advice you're kind of giving across your client base?
So I think that whether it's idle, which obviously has, we can get into that, but whether it's idle, whether it's, the city of Austin just came out with some bridge loans. The reality is that the debt that is currently available is cheaper than most debt that the restaurants could have gone and taken previously. So I do think, get in line and try to backstop if you're committed to seeing this through, depending on what your lease situation is like, depending on what your business was before. Look, if you were I call them zombie restaurants, right? If you were cash poor and you were living weekend to weekend sales wise to meet your obligations, you're a zombie, right? Yeah. You're a dead restaurant walking and acting like you're a live one. And there were a lot of those. And the current programs are not going to bring you back from the dead. The PPP doesn't have a personal guarantee. The idle doesn't have a personal guarantee up to 200K. I know these things, but honestly, I think you've got to be really honest with yourself about where your business was going into this before you commit to more debt, because that's only going to put you in hotter water down the road.
Yeah.
But if you were healthy, I think you should be, golly guys, sorry. I think you should be looking at available capital and trying to get your hands on it, and not necessarily paying it out right away, but letting time pass and getting more information to strategically either pivot the concept into a post COVID-19 concept or not. Short term, right now, the thing that I'm recommending to my clients are, if you're not running weekly payrolls, go weekly payrolls for the next 8 weeks. Guidelines aren't out yet. I've had everybody, I've started, so I told Matthew this, we're at 32 out of 50 PPP loans funded. And we're working on, in the second round, we're working on the rest of the other 18. Anecdotally, 15 of the 18 were at Chase and Bank of America, the ones that didn't get funded. All my small banks and local banks did. But I'm telling everybody, go weekly payrolls, staff up to execute your current revenue model. So you're at least banking some dollars into the PPP. It's not going to be enough. But we're just going to have to wait for guidelines, and we're going to have to wait for guidelines each week. And so what we need to do is we need to run with it the way we currently interpret it. And then if we hear something different next week, then we need to change in week 2 or week 3 or subsequent weeks. And it may be that we have a strategy in the first 4 weeks that we get guidelines later and say, oh man, we've got to pivot. But I think, and I'd love your guys' opinion on it, but it seems to be that everybody's interests are aligned for forgiveness. The banks want to get forgiveness. The SBA wants to forgive these loans. So I feel like if you're making decisions based off of the best information available, and then you get cleaner information and you need to change, in a look back, I would hope that both the bank and or the SBA would say, okay, that's what happened, right? They adjusted. We didn't give them enough information. They finally got the information. They changed their behavior. This is good forgiveness. We will forgive these dollars. But I think that weekly payroll is important, because you're going to have to be flexible, and you're going to have to move quickly, and you're going to have to be paying attention to what's happening.
Yeah, I think the New York Times test, seeing what you did in the headlines, and being consistent and being a true kind of steward of these funds, in the spirit that they were given, is a big deal. I think so, and I like to think that the cooler heads will prevail if we're all doing the right thing and thinking about it. And on the other side, if people are not sincere or trying to take advantage of this program, and after they're seeing 200% growth increases, like if you're an e-commerce business and you just grew 200%, don't apply for these funds, because we got these restaurants and hospitals, hospitality, all these industries that are really struggling. So it'll be really interesting to see the fallout. But I'm advising people to kind of really think about that. What does that look in the headline? You don't want to be Steak Shack. You don't want to be, whether that's good, bad, or indifferent. Steak Shack.
Well,
You don't want to put them or Ruth Chris, right?
Well, no, but I mean, but you know what? I'll take a little bit of a counter argument there on this one. Like, those are occupancy based businesses. They have been, by no fault of their own, all of those have been negatively affected by COVID-19, more so than the other businesses. And they didn't write the law. The affiliate rules were there. They were organized with less than 45 employees per unit. Like, you know, that's on Washington to not get that wrong. That's not on Shake Shack. That's not on Ruth's Chris.
Well, I guess the ones I'm thinking of are those are ones that made the headlines that I can think of, but there's some public companies and other.
Yeah, I mean, those are the ones everyone's talking about. I mean, I would hope in those situations, and Brian, you probably know more about this than I do. I mean, I was just talking about this because I have someone I've worked with for a long time who actually is a fairly large Ruth Chris franchisee, and is one of the most giving people in our community, and especially other restaurants. And so that was one of the questions I had. I was like, well, they're getting horrible press, but I'm like, she's a franchisee. Like, I don't know if what was happening was at the franchisor level, which was my expectation. It was probably at the franchisor level, you know. And I'm like, man, I just hope she doesn't get impacted because, you know, I know what good she does for other restaurants in our community. Anyway, it's just kind of an interesting. I'm a little worried about the forgiveness side of it still. Like, I think that your steps are correct and the advice you're giving, because I am concerned it was challenging enough for people just to get the applications for the loan. I'm like, oh man, I'm a little concerned about like this, you know, how different it could be amongst banks and like who's going to get forgiveness and not. But I think your advice and counsel of show intent, be good, be thoughtful, be mindful. If you can show like you weren't like every week by week, we're running payroll. We're trying to be real thoughtful about how we do this, and we're going to document it in some way. That's probably the best thing you can do. Let me plug you guys, right? It's like, you guys got your forgiveness tracker, right? It's like, use the forgiveness tracker. Go ahead, create an account that is specifically, park all the PPP funds in a new account. Transfer out of that account to match the dollars that are on the report, right? Here's my week 1 gross wages. I'm transferring that exact dollar amount. Here's my rent invoice. I'm transferring that exact dollar amount. Here's my city of Austin utilities bill. I'm transferring that exact dollar amount. So then when you run your bank statements for that PPP account, every dollar matches every report. Yeah. You put that in a folder and you hand that to your bank. The bank is going to be so happy. Yeah. Because you're clean. They're going to take that to the SBA. Think about the SBA's volume. I mean, I heard from a banker that the part of the program delay, right, was getting a username to access the SBA site. There was a 24,000 person list backlogged to get a username on April 2nd. Okay, so imagine forgiveness. It's going to be the same thing. And so the way forgiveness is going to work is that the SBA is going to want those banks to have it organized, and these banks are going to want you to have it organized. So again, this is, you know, we'll all pat ourselves on the back here. Good bookkeeping matters. It does matter. It matters right now. Absolutely.
Right. And again, it's like, so if you don't have a bookkeeper, hire one. And if you're, you know, I mean, it's just, they're the easiest dollars that you can spend right now, because they're going to help you present the documents in a clean way. And then that's what I think ultimately is going to help expedite forgiveness.
Yeah.
At least I would hope.
Yeah. And then if I ran the world, like, I hope there's some kind of forgiveness tweak to deal with the people that weren't impacted at all. So
I can't believe it's not going to happen.
I know, but I can't believe the forgiveness calc didn't have something in there to demonstrate, because it was first in, first out, right? So people if you saw something happening, a lot of people in good faith applied for this loan, right? And then if it didn't come to fulfillment in non-occupancy based businesses like you're talking about, it's just really fascinating. So hopefully cooler minds prevail and some rational thought comes out in the next week and a half on some guidance fronts. But I doubt it.
You tell me, you point to me the cool rational minds in Washington, please. I'll happily send them campaign dollars. I haven't seen one yet.
Somebody point that out. Yeah, I'm with you on that, Brian.
That's funny. Cool. You want to break for beers, Kenji?
Want to rate the beers? Oh yeah.
We
Okay.
don't have the tequila to rate. Which tequila do you use, Brian, today, by the way?
I went with Herradura today. I usually go Don Julio, but I think, well, actually Annie made me this one, so I'll give her a 5 out of 5.
Okay, awesome.
I need to get on that. That is such a great drink, and I'm like, you know what? Such a good classic, clean, like, you know, just that ranch water. I'm like, I need to. You inspired me. I'm like, man, I got to break some of that out. Get some Topo Chico, you know, here,
Yep.
and there you go. That's my wife and I. We always say that, like, our biggest problem with margaritas is the inconsistency. Some of them are just too over the top, sugar and all that, you know, all the.
Yeah.
So good, man. I'll go on my, like, I mean, I'm going to go on this one. This is a good solid for me. I'm going to go 3.5.
Oh,
3.5 out of 5. It's good. It's good solid. Good solid, like, you know.
Like good solid is like in the 4s, isn't it? No?
Well, you got to be a little, yeah, certainly. We did that. I mean, think about good old Pliny the Elder when we had that. That had to be a 5.
Yeah.
We had a couple others.
I even like that one, and I don't like IPAs. That was pretty good.
Yeah. I would disown you if you didn't like that. Okay, what did you have again, Matthew? You had the, oh, yeah.
Black and tan.
There it is.
I'm going to go 3.25.
I knew it. See what you, dude, that's your tell. Okay, you're a good poker player, but when you do an interesting as your first, I shouldn't have told you that. Like, now I told you your tell. When you do a 3.25, I'm sorry, when you do an interesting, I know it's like, it's gonna be okay.
It was okay. It wasn't. I think it's probably a low ABV too. I tend to like the high ABVs.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what's the ABV on the Lagunitas?
It's like 6.5, 6.2, 5, something like that.
Okay. Yeah, that's. I love IPAs, but man, I mean, they'll pack a punch if you're not careful.
So I'm excited, actually. I'll announce it here. I mean, first, but like Matthew and I've talked about, like I've started trying to brew some beer while I've been at home. So our first batch is coming out. I tried one actually last night. It needs a little more time to condition in the bottle, but I've already got showing up today, like my next IPA kind of kit. So I'm kind of going low brow. Like I'm just doing kind of some kits and things, but like I'm going to try to get an IPA in. It's been kind of fun
I like it. Everybody's on that sourdough bread. And you're like, you know what? I'm going alcohol.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. If I'm going to ferment something, let's go alcohol. Exactly.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. Well, this is awesome, man. It's great reconnecting with you. And
yeah,
I think your counsel and advice is great for other independent restaurants and just for, again, some of the local business owners. So hopefully we get a few people to see this and ask some questions. We'll put some links in here to where you can connect with Brian and see.
Where's the best place to connect with you, Brian?
Yeah.
genuinearticleatx.com. That's my site. Shows my predominantly Austin client base. Got a few in San Antonio, and of course, in this process, I've been fielding some calls from Houston and Dallas. But the restaurant business is the restaurant business, so I'm happy to talk to anybody. I love talking shop. I love, one last little anecdote is, when I started working in restaurants, once I could take care of a section, I wanted to take care of the whole restaurant. Once I was managing restaurants, I wanted to manage more than one. And after managing a couple, I said, you know what? I said, I need more. I need more. So I just keep upping the number of things that I'm trying to do for restaurants. But, again, numbers are the fun part. And if done right, they can help restaurants make the right decisions. Our entire decision-making tree just got blown up.
Yeah.
But
well, I know. I appreciate that. We appreciate that because I think that that's what you love doing is a thing that almost every restaurant I know needs. Like they do not love that, right? And so loving the accounting financial side of a restaurant is an incredibly unique and a great skill. So that's awesome. We love that you're helping so many others out there. And hopefully we get a few more folks to tune in to kind of some of the good thoughts and advice you've got there.
Wow.
We'll put links in to connect people to you and see what
well, thanks for your guys' help.
Yeah, man.
That's I mean, my wife's the best. She's the one who sent me. She said, hey, Matthew's got a PPP forgiveness calculator. And I looked at it and I was like, oh, what do you know? It's the best calculator I've seen so far. This is great. So it's been helpful. So what you guys are doing and sharing across all industries is equally as necessary and valuable for sure.
Well, cool.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, man. We appreciate it. We got to look forward to next time we
Cheers.
can actually do
Cheers,
this
everyone.
together. Cheers,
Yes.
everyone. See everyone. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see everyone next week.